Welcome to the MTT podcast. I'm
All
Super
right.
Dave, and we've got the man, David Bennett, my sidekick for this podcast, my right hand man. I'm super pumped that you're here with me tonight. This is our first podcast of the 23-24 season, and hopefully, we're going to commit to doing this, man. Are we committing to doing this or what?
I think we need to because I missed you. I really did. I mean, I missed being in a position to where we can talk about, what's happening, whether it's on a TV screen or a computer screen, if you watch replay or whatever. But like, dude, do you remember a couple of years ago, we ended up making a lot of people mad. We talked about Venus Williams. And God, if we did that one time, who knows what we're about to do now?
Oh, man. So if you're watching this and you don't know what Dave's talking about, we had the Apply Rigor podcast several years ago, and we brought in just different different videos of what was happening in the current,
Yep.
recent news kind of thing. And we had a
Yep.
blast doing it. We caught some heat, and you since moved away. You went to Florida,
That's right.
and so
That's
now
right.
we're doing this via StreamYard. And tonight we're going to be talking about the 6 reasons you're a slave to your emotions. We've got 6 reasons we're going to go through. If you haven't heard me talk before, my nickname is Super Dave. That goes back many, many years, but mostly just the name is Dave Jones, and like it's a very common name. And when I go to the cleaners or the bank, there's always 200,000 Dave Jones. So Super Dave is real easy.
There's only one though. There's only one real Dave Jones.
There's only one.
There's only one.
I am one class away from being a doctoral candidate in sport and performance psychology. So this time next year, hopefully I'll have an educational doctorate in sport and performance psychology. So I have a little bit of background in the sports side of the world. I did play pro hockey, and I have been working with a lot of different collegiate teams, mostly hockey teams, organizations for the last 11 years. And so yeah, Dave, you want to get a little background about yourself, and then let's kick it off with the 6 reasons you're a slave to your emotions?
Yeah, absolutely. For me, where Dave was a hockey guy, I was a soccer guy. Played soccer in college. Have worked kind of in the professional world since graduating from college. Really spent most of my time in logistics, both here in the United States and globally. And with that, I was able to spend some time, about 6 years, in the Raleigh-Durham area, which is where I met Dave, and found that we had, I think, a lot in common, and have a good time spending time together. And so, you kind of get from both of us this mix of sports, psychology, business, boardroom, all in one. So no matter what area you're coming from, as you listen to this podcast, there's going to be something you can apply. We're going to do our best to make it as awesome as possible for you.
Yeah, and you've got 2 sons that are involved in sports, soccer
I do.
players, right?
Yeah. I've got 4 kids, but my 2 sons, my 18-year-old's a freshman at Gordon College up outside of Boston, playing NCAA Division III soccer. And then my other son is a senior in high school, looking where his soccer home is going to be. Both very different. One's about 6 feet tall, the other's almost 6'4". So, for all of us that have sports backgrounds, know that there's a big difference between those 2 heights. But I grew up, coaching my kids, watching my kids play club sports, traveling with my kids, much like you did, Dave. And man, so much of parenting, and I can attest to Dave on this, is learning how to parent really well in those sports moments. And really, Dave helped push me to get away from, telling my kids good job, which my older son had a game today, which they won. But I'm telling you, my friend, I did everything I could not to say good job, but more about how do you think you did? What are some things you learned? I got to watch that on the internet today, so that was a good day.
That's awesome. And I've got 2 kids as well. One plays junior hockey right now out in Utah. My other is a senior in high school. He plays basketball and golf. And so they're 19 and 17 years old. So we're right in the mix of what's next for their lives after they've been through youth sports. So interesting time. So tonight we're going to be talking about the 6 reasons
You're a slave to your emotions.
All right, let me back up there.
6 reasons you know you're a slave to your emotions.
All right, so we're going to go through this. Here's number 1 of the 6 reasons.
Number 1, you rarely think about others. Here, Pierre-Luc Dubois is an egotistical player that we often don't see in hockey.
And watch this exchange with his young center, Pierre-Luc Dubois.
Now, this has happened before. Tortorella has said he tries so hard. When he doesn't go well, he gets frustrated. I try to get him to forget it. I don't think he was having him forget anything there. There was quite a back and forth. Look at the players on the bench, though. That's one thing you've seen with the head coach and different guys. He goes back at each other. Be interesting to see if that's a motivator. And no surprise, Jim.
Number 2.
All right. So what are we looking at there?
Yep. We're really talking about thinking about yourself. So Dave, here's my question. When you're in a position like that, I would ask, where does defensiveness come into play? Because when you watch that, there's a bit of that in there, isn't there?
So this is, awesome question. There's what I call flap, right? There's fear, lust, anger, and pride. A lot of times, all of us, well, I won't say a lot of times, all the time, all of us are struggling with at least 2 of those. So what your flap is what I call it. Your fear, your lust, your anger, and your pride. So we're all struggling with at least 2 of those at any given moment throughout our day. And so with sports, the psychology is a study of human behavior. Sports psychology is study of the human behavior within sports. And one thing I love about it is it increases the intensity. So a lot of times, when we're in intense moments, our flap comes out more so than it would when it's less intense. So here we can see a coach player getting intense with each other. Now, what's happening then is, they're engaging. Well, let me ask you this. What do you think they're engaging if we look at the flap, the fear, lust, anger, pride? What do you think is happening there?
Oh man, my first guess when I looked at it is probably pride. Don't tell me I'm not doing what I need to do.
Yeah. And so with a guy like John Tortorella, he's very much, he is in your face right now and he wants to win the argument. And so a player that wants to win the argument right now, the emotions are high. It's another concept that we call high and low EI. So the emotions are high, the pride's in the way, and here we go, tick for tack. So let's talk about it from the player's perspective. Does it make sense for him to try to win that argument in that moment with the coach?
You never win that argument, Dave.
You never win
ever. I don't care if it's on the hockey bench or if it's at your desk where you work. That argument is not a winning argument. All that argument is defensiveness. It's a whole lot of emotions and it's a whole lot of wasted energy.
Yeah. So let's look at it from the coach's perspective. Does he want to win that argument in that moment?
I'll be curious to see what you think about this. It's almost funny because, the little that we know about Tortorella or Torts, who's now coaching in Philadelphia, I just needed to slide that one in there as a Flyer fan,
right?
Is I don't know that he cares about winning the argument. He's got to get some stuff off his chest and he's going to get it off whether that player wants to hear it or not.
That's right. So, I think in this case, no player wins, no coach wins. Right. But he's got a coach. Now I can hear some of the purist coaches going, I need to get this into the player. I really don't care about the moment. Shut up or sit at the end of the bench. You're not playing. That was the old school way of coaching. Now we have what's called a psychologically safe environment where, teams that are performing well at the upper ranges of their abilities, consistently under pressure in the biggest moments, they have the freedom to be engaged in the moment. They have the freedom to correct themselves, and the coach is an ambassador. The coach isn't defending. And so, we're seeing that now throughout all of sports. high school, college, pro level, where the players need to be in a safe place to be able to adjust.
So let me ask you this. So when you think about this term, psychologically safe, it almost sounds really soft for a coach to hear those terms.
Yeah.
And a coach, many of them grew up with pretty fiery coaches or coaches that were tough. How do you balance being a tough coach and still driving this idea of being psychologically safe?
Yeah. So you can see guys like John Cooper. Guys like John Cooper are creating psychologically safe environments. For those that don't know, John Cooper won how many Stanley Cups now?
Many.
3? Is it 3?
I think
2 or
so.
3 with Tampa Bay.
Yep.
And he has a discussion. He has a collaborative discussion. You will never see him going tick for tack on the bench trying to win an argument. It's very much, an engagement, a conversation, and it deflects back on the player to say, let's see how that goes. And it's not like, a hierarchical conversation, like, let's see how this goes, see if it works your way. Then we'll come back to my way. That's not what's happening here. What's happening is, we've discussed that we're going to be angry in the moment. We will talk about it at a more convenient time. Probably the game, in the middle of the game, is not the time to do that. Right? Let's watch the video. Let's talk about the scenario. Let's plan for adversity so we don't have that. That moment is a catastrophic moment on both players who haven't planned to win. They haven't discussed the intensity of the game.
So you've talked already in this podcast about emotional intelligence, or EI.
Yeah.
In that example of John Cooper, that's a high EI interaction, right?
Other way, low EI.
I'm sorry, you're right.
Yeah,
Low
yeah,
EI.
it's a mental breakdown. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
So in those low EI moments, we got to know that, how many games has Torts been to in his lifetime?
Who knows? So many than you and I both.
Maybe 1,000 games. I don't know. He's been in that situation before to know that we're going to have to plan for adversity. We're going to be in situations where it's not convenient or not convenient, but it was going to be more conflict than other moments, right? And so we know that going into the game. We know the referees aren't going to call it our way. We know we're going to have peaks and valleys throughout the shift, throughout a period. So in those valleys, we got to be supportive. In those valleys, we got to know, how am I going to mentally get back to the peak? And so tearing at each other in the valley, man, that's low EI. And that's not productive for anybody.
Right. So a psychologically safe environment is the same as having a high EI environment as well, driven by the leaders specifically.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's collaborative. It's engaging. It's thought-provoking. It's not weak. It's actually the opposite. It's very strong. It's allowing the player to fail and feel successful. I've said this before. I heard Michael Jordan say this about a year ago, and I thought, he is a narcissist, man. And one of the things he said, I've never failed. And then I was thinking, what a narcissist, right? And then he wanted to explain. He said, I've looked at every opportunity of where I didn't look at it as a failure. I looked at it as an opportunity to learn. So that's a psychologically safe environment. This is an opportunity for me to learn. I'm not going to be benched or thrown off the team if I fail. That creates stress and anxiety and depression, right? But when you're in an environment where, it's an opportunity to get better, then you don't fail. It's always an opportunity to get better.
Yeah.
And I love that. That's amazing. And so, if a player's voicing their opinion and they're having, to defend themselves in the moment, that's not a psychologically safe environment. That's an egotistical environment. That's run by a narcissist. That's run by somebody who says it's my way or the highway, which doesn't work anymore. I've actually gotten that comment, like, psychologically safe. That sounds like a liberal woke statement, and it's just not. You know,
It does sound like everybody gets a trophy.
yeah, it's not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, so it's an environment where you can fail and still be applauded and still, say, okay, how do we learn from this? Not sit at the other bench or you're not playing. That's not a psychologically safe environment. That's being scared to play. That's being
Yeah.
scared to take chances. And we know in sports, you got to have this unbelievable confidence to be able to adjust. And if I'm scared of what my coach is going to do or whether I'm going to be benched to make an adjustment, that's not safe.
Yep. Yep. Yeah. I've seen it before where, from a soccer standpoint, where, my sons are both goalkeepers, and, you have coaches that want to create an environment that's not psychologically safe from the standpoint that, they're never going to really name who the number one starter is, or because they want the players to always be wondering if they're going to get to start or not. And as a goalkeeper, that's tough because you want to be mentally prepared. You want to kind of think through what you have to do,
Yeah.
and then some of these coaches' thoughts are, well, no, I want them to always be working for that spot and not knowing whether or not they're actually going to get it. And I'm going, that's really not a safe thing at all. Now there are ways to get better performance out of your athletes, but at the same time, you want to create that place to where they get to a spot to, so that they are confident in what they're doing and they're not wondering all the time where they stand. It
Yeah.
drives me bananas, man, with coaches that don't want you to be solid in where you stand.
Yeah.
And what I'm finding, with my kids especially, is as they have gotten some other coaches that have done the complete opposite, how much more confident they are, under control they are, how much better vision they have for what's happening, and they perform better. You know,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, I've even had one coach where, at a high level, these kids are playing the highest level of soccer in the country, in terms of travel and everything, called MLS Next. You have some coaches that won't tell the kids, the goalkeepers, who's starting until they're in warm-ups. And I'm like, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
I mean, how do you perform at a high level when you don't know and you wait till the last second, man? Like, come on.
Well, a lot of times I would say that some coaches want them to be ready, to play. And so to be mentally prepared to play, even if it is the last minute,
Yep.
that's certainly a way of doing it. And that model's been successful. But there's also the model of, hey, you're number one and you're number two. And that's the way it is right now. Now that can change.
Yep.
Number two, here's what you need to do to be number one. And
Correct.
when you do this, let's have a conversation about that. And number one, let's have a conversation about, you being number one. Here's why you're number one. And if you fall off that, I'm going to hold you accountable to those. There's also a Pygmalion coach, which is very dangerous. A Pygmalion coach says, you will always be number two throughout the entire season. You have no chance of being number one.
That's brutal.
And that's just the way it's going to be. In fact, it starts in tryouts. A Pygmalion coach philosophy starts at tryouts where, the number two, in your case, number two, he's a number two and he makes the team as number two. And then in his mind, he will never become number one throughout the season, no matter what he does. So it's important for number two to go to coach and say, how do I become number one? Give me something to work from. Give me something, anything. And then can I have weekly or monthly conversations with you on how I'm progressing to be number one, because I want to be number one. That holds number one accountable, but then number two, it holds them accountable to get better. And they know where they're at. And so when they do accomplish those items, whatever those skills are, that they get a chance to be number one, to be able to prove themselves. But that takes a lot of planning and a lot of strategy for that coach to lay down those attributes of why this person's number one, this is number two. And so, that to me is a different way of coaching, but it also gives the players something to aspire to, because just a feeling at game time is not enough for me. It's just I don't want to say weak coaching. I know it's been done for years, and there's successful organizations and teams out there that do that. I think it's unfair to players, and it's the same thing in hockey. If you have 8 defensemen and only 6 play, you need to get with 7 and 8 and tell them why they're not playing.
Yep.
That's not fair, man. And that leaves a lot of anxiety and depression. I talked to a lot of hockey players throughout the season that, a lot of them, some of them are just, they're 7-8, or they're on the 4th line as forwards, or they're the 3rd goalie, and they haven't talked to their coaches since tryouts. That's not good, man.
So, okay, so can we talk about that for a second? Because that's what I've found too, especially in youth sports, is the older they get, the coaches, obviously, you and I both coached, we don't want to hear from the players badgering us about, the parents badgering us about why their kid isn't playing.
Yeah.
Not interested. We want the kids to come and talk to us, especially as they get older. When you're talking about U19s, U17s, they should be able to come and talk to the coach and talk about playing time. But the fact is, most of them don't. And when they don't do that, they're making assumptions as to why they're not playing versus hearing from the coach why they're not playing, or what they can do to change, and it's brutal because it's like you're pushing the kid going, go talk to the coach. You know what I mean? And they don't.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's really them. They got to have that confidence to be able to get with coach and have those conversations with them,
Agreed.
and that takes, and it can't be, hey coach, I need to talk to you right now. It's, hey coach, can I talk to you in a couple of days, whatever your schedule is. I just, I want to work on some stuff. I want to set down some goals, some deliberate goals,
I love it.
Has your son ever done that before, do you think?
I don't know that either of them have ever sat down with their coach to talk about specific goals like that. They typically get an eval multiple times a year, and they can look at that and they have performance conversations with coaching. But to sit down and say, hey, here are the 3 things you got to improve on in this next period to get more PT or whatever, I don't know. I haven't seen a lot of coaches pull that trigger yet.
Yeah, that's unfortunate.
Yep.
All right, let's go to number 2.
Let's hit it.
Oh, there we go. Sorry.
Before you speak. Let's watch Tom Brady and Bill O'Brien speak first before they think.
Awesome. But look at this. Tom Brady and Bill O'Brien, his offensive coordinator, fill in the blanks. That is a heated conversation. This went on for a while. O'Brien comes back for a little bit more. Coaches are trying. Bill Belichick finally has to come over and say, calm down, guys.
Number 3.
Okay, so I don't know if we can add much more to that. It's kind of the same thing we already talked about. It's an epic letdown on both sides.
Okay, but time out. When you read that, when you look at that, aren't you thinking about NFL bad lip reading at that point? Like, dude, there's so many things they could be talking about in that space. Where do you want to go to dinner? I don't know.
Yeah. That's funny.
Oh my gosh. But yeah, we've kind of talked about it. That's a pretty heated discussion on both sides, and I don't know that it helped.
Yeah. All right, let's go to the next one.
Campaign to get people on your side when you immediately speak your mind, or dare I say it, you say something stupid. Let's take a look at this clip where Jarvis Landry gets a fight in practice.
There you go, now finish. Here we go. Stay up, stay up. You can't fight the freak.
Number 4, your action.
Okay.
I've never understood the football fight. Can't you break your hand when you hit somebody in the helmet?
I think hockey players got the idea to take everything off, right?
Exactly. That shows the hockey players are smarter. Oh my gosh. What a clip.
So you campaign, you say something dumb, and then you campaign to get everybody on your side.
Yeah, that's called a drama queen.
Yeah.
You know? But again, you're talking about flap, right?
Fear, lust, anger,
You know,
pride. Sure. Yeah.
yeah. I think in that example, when you're campaigning to get people on your side, it's fear based, isn't it? Because you need people to be on your side. You're afraid of whatever is happening, and you need people to get on your side so you can create this false campaign against whatever.
Yeah. So a lot of times, the loudest person in the room is the most insecure person. So it's kind of like that stiff arm that, get behind me, stay away from me. I don't want to be, so I'll just bark really loud so you can't get to really know what my real issue is. Again, when you say something stupid, you get somebody on your side. Now you're trying to get the committee of they to say, hey, this is how the group thinks. And try to support you, which is just another masking tool, just like talking a lot.
Yeah, it's purely dysfunctional.
Yeah.
So let me ask you this. As a coach, when you see a player do that, what's your response?
There's something going on in his life that I need to talk to him about, because I understand that sports just exasperates already existing issue. So there's something else happening.
I think a wise sage named Superius Davidius once said, sports is a petri dish of emotions.
That's it.
Right?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. And man, have we not seen that so many times all over the place in the last few years that people are icebergs, man.
Yeah.
You only see that much of them. And the sad thing is people do awful things to themselves. And typically what happens afterwards is someone says, I had no idea that they were struggling with anything. And, to your point, if you pay attention, you probably could figure it out a little bit, but nobody has the courage to ask.
I play for my self-talk coping strategy. I usually play Aaron Donald clip, and it's him really just amping himself up. And one of the things he says is controlled aggression, let's go, controlled aggression. And I think about, what that means, like having Aaron Donald not being controlled aggression, like not being controlled in his aggression. That's crazy.
Right.
Right. And so just being able to narrow down that idea to me is just so awesome.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I love that.
So that to me is sports in a nutshell. Like we have aggression, we have other things that are going outside in our life, but how do we aim it? Right. Versus throwing up all over it and, getting more people involved and creating drama and being the lowest of low EI guys in the room. Like it's just not good for the team.
Right. Yeah, it's one of those. It's like when you go to Lowe's or Home Depot and you buy one of those attachments for the hose, and it's got all the different options for the water that comes out. Dude, when you think about which one's better,
That's such a great analogy.
You've got the one that just vomits all the water out.
Yeah.
You're like, what the heck would I use this for? And the other one is the jet stream, and that's the one you can use on, your car, your kid, your pet, or whatever, that just focuses all the energy in one place, man. Can you imagine? Because I don't know if you've ever done that, but God, you hit the one, it's just like, and I'm like, I don't know what I do with that thing.
Yeah. All right. Number 4.
Don't help the situation.
Oh.
Or the people around you. Let's watch Odell Beckham instigate fights with Josh Norman and set their team back.
OBJ.
Beckham turned frustration into a foolish vendetta with cornerback Josh Norman.
Not high school football, folks.
Man.
It ain't Compton versus Crenshaw. Professional football.
Bill Green's got the first down. Oh, and Odell Beckham Jr., he's going to get flagged again.
Get him out of the game.
He came in late and head first launched and tried to throw a block. He's out of control.
Coach Coughlin, just sit him. Sit him. and Norman's winning. He doesn't even realize it.
Number 5.
Okay.
Oh my gosh.
There's so much to unpack there.
You know, so much of pro sports is about trying to get in someone else's head, you know, and the person who's getting into their head rarely ever gets penalized. It's the person that retaliates. And isn't that true in life?
So in the hockey space, we call this chirping, like chirping players. And over the years, you know, I've identified, you know, I work with the whole team, the whole hockey team. Probably towards the end of the season, I always bring this up when we get into playoffs and say, okay, who in the room is a good chirper? You know, and so everybody says, oh, what's his name? He's got the best chirps ever. And then I say, should he be chirping? Because if you can chirp and stay high, stay in control, then the other person, then you're winning that, right? Like it's a strategy. But if you chirp and you end up in the penalty box because you get so emotionally attached to the chirp, right? And somebody gives it back to you, you lose. You're not playing mental ping pong well, right? You're not playing the game well. And so the question becomes, who can chirp? Who can stay above the fold, get that person to be low-y high, get them in the penalty box, and you're not in the penalty box, so we can be on the power play, right? Yep. So somebody's got to be, you know, stronger mentally. And so here we can see Odell, and who is he bickering with?
Josh Norman.
Josh Norman. And so like they're both losing, but Josh Norman appears to be on the higher side, right?
Oh yeah,
because
ready.
Now Odell's getting pulled out of the game, so Josh Norman wins
every time. Yeah, there was a kid on my 18-year-old team a couple years ago. He plays D1 at High Point University now. He was the best, man. You know, in hockey talk, you know, he would have been a defenseman. And man, could that kid get in people's heads? Oh my gosh. And it was just hilarious. And they would try to say stuff to him. He'd just look at him and laugh and then keep playing because he was so high up that EI ladder that there was no way you were ever going to crack the code there, but he could dish it. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So that's part of being mentally tough, is being able to take those darts, right? Yep. Those missiles, those verbal missiles, be in the valley, but still play at the upper range of your ability consistently under pressure in the biggest moments.
Yep, it's Dennis Rodman, baby. It's Dennis Rodman all day.
Yeah, Dennis Rodman.
It is.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Go Google it if you're watching and you don't know who Dennis Rodman is.
Norman's winning. He doesn't even realize it.
Number 5, you're stressed and have trouble sleeping at night. Struggling to sleep at night can really cast a shadow on your performance and engage that silent opposition within you.
All right. Let's talk about the silent opposition within you.
I was wondering what clip you were going to show on this one.
There's no clip for that one.
Okay.
So, thinking about that, there's a silent opposition, and that's, between your ears, and so by not sleeping at night is one of the biofeedback metrics that says I'm a slave to my emotions.
Yep.
Like that is a very good indicator. So your fear, lust, anger, pride's in the way. You've done one of these 6 things.
Yeah.
And so it's going back, reflecting. Remember, if we take that idea that no mistake is ever, there is no mistake, it's always a learning opportunity. You can't sleep at night, then you got to learn from the past 48 hours where you were a slave to your emotions.
A lot of times we believe things that aren't true, whether they're things about ourselves or things about people have said. And, author and speaker Brene Brown unpacked this quite famously years ago on a TED Talk and in a book, this idea that, Dave, if you and I have a conversation and we get done with that, and I believe that you said certain things, and whether you said it or not or meant to say it, but if I take in that conversation, however I believe it went, is how I biologically am wired to believe the truth of what actually happened. So how many times you've been in a conversation and someone says, well, last time we talked, you said this, this, and this. And you're like, I didn't say any of that.
Yeah.
And they're like, yeah, you did. Well, here's the reality. However they received it, they're biologically wired that that's how it's going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and as coaches and leaders, it's important that when you're having that constructive or coaching conversation, when you get done, to say, hey, could you do me a favor? Tell me what you just heard me say.
Yes.
Or what you just think I said, and let them repeat it back to you. Because,
yes.
And it's not to accuse them and say you're not listening, because what you're trying to do is rewire the biology in a way that you can coach and help them in that process, versus allowing them to go to how many sleepless nights thinking you just said they suck, they're horrible, they have no future, they have no hope, they're a problem, they're a drama queen, whatever it is, because you're trying to kind of rewire that circuitry.
It's such a huge tip right there. What did you hear me say? Like that's good in the workforce, that's good in sports, it's good in coaching. What did you just hear me say? And man, the clarification comes out of that, because I know you've done that. And it's like, that's not what I said. Let's go over what we just said. Or you got half of what I just said. Yeah, that's really good.
Yeah, because you're fighting biology.
That's good.
Do we have a number? Are we at number 6?
I think we're at number 5.
We're at number 5. All right.
6, you take criticism as a personal attack and don't like change. Here we can see Jimmy Butler get hostile with his coach. Check out this clip.
So we've got hockey, we got football, we got baseball, it's basketball, it's happening everywhere. Now, these are just, coach player relationships, but here he's trying to coach. Like, just geeking out here for a second, in the limbic side of the brain, where the emotion is kind of all comes in from the neocortex, and the limbic kind of says, this is good for me, flight or fight. Right? This is bad for me. It's taking all this in. When your mindset is in this limbic side of the brain, which is low EI, all the emotions are running. You cannot think logically. It's impossible. It doesn't work. There is no what, where, when, and how. It's all why. It's all emotion. And so giving tactical instruction, trying to clarify, like, you're just better off saying, let's finish this game and let's talk about this later and come back in 24 hours. There's another acronym that I like to use. It's called HALT. So when we're in an emotional state like that, we don't want to make any big decisions when we're hungry, angry, lonely, or tired. So we can see that in this case, the coach is angry, the player is angry, we need to halt. And so now it's we need to institute the 24-hour rule. This is all planning to win, setting these parameters before it happens, because these are all catastrophic situations that should have been eliminated by planning.
How do you do that?
You're going to be low EI during the game, and that that's going to happen throughout the season. And so you have to get ahead of it. As a coach, you have to get ahead of it. As a player, that's called being mentally tough, that you're not going to have you're not going to have the best game, the best shift, right? The best periods throughout the season. And you've got to wait to address it when I address it on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, right? When you're outside of, and I won't talk to players on the weekends. I just won't, because you're just emotionally charged. We need to not be emotionally charged, have a 24-hour period, go back, watch the video, and have those upper level, deeper conversations.
In the example, in the clip though, do you think there's power in, as a coach, trying to have a singular focus on one thing? Because I think sometimes if you let it get into a more personal thing, and now we're dealing with 3 things instead of 1 thing, it can get out of hand.
Well, yeah. I mean, but not in that moment, right? Not in the game. It's the wrong time. So yes, we need to have those conversations, just not right now.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Because somebody in that exchange, somebody needs to be high EI in that exchange.
Yes.
And in that exchange, it was neither.
That's right. That's
Millions
right.
of millions of dollars were spent in the crumbling of the Miami Heat in that moment.
Mm-hmm. So in the psychologically safe environment, or being a slave to your emotion, it all comes by planning. It all comes by planning for adversity, that we're not going to like each other. But in that moment, we need to perform, and having those breakdowns mentally is not the right time. Let's do that on Monday and Tuesday, where we can think logically.
Yeah. And a lot of times in that, from a business standpoint, one of the things that I coach a lot of the people that I'm fortunate to serve these days, is most issues are not problems to solve. They're tensions to manage. It's a
There you go.
completely different mindset.
Yes, that's really powerful.
You can't stall somebody, and you can't solve it in that moment. You just manage the tension, to your point, then let it breathe for a couple days and then address it.
This is such an awesome point. Like, just pausing here for a second, talking about this, because, when I think about anxiety, all the sports psychology journals that I've read, and I've read a lot in the last 4 years, say that you cannot eliminate anxiety, right? There is a certain level of arousal, anxiety, that you need for peak performance. So it's not eliminating anxiety, it's working with it. There's actually a theory out there that says, if I believe my anxiety helps me perform, I will be a better performer. If I believe my anxiety is not going to help me perform, I will not perform well. And so, like, looking at it going, I need a certain level of anxiety. I need to feel like this. This is going to be awesome. So you're never going to eliminate the doubt, the anxiety, the stress. You got to live with it and use it to your benefit, because you can't eliminate it. It's always going to be there.
Makes sense. Yeah, I mean, you could argue it's what gives you your edge.
Yeah.
If you're going to go do something and you don't have some level of anxiety, tension, fear, or whatever it is, you're going to be a little too lackadaisical, and you're not really going to be on your edge. If you remember, Dave, gosh, a couple of years ago when we were doing the Apply Rigor podcast, we talked about stress bands.
Mm-hmm.
And we had David Friedson on, and we talked about the idea that, we live in a world where we want to be in this stress band in the middle. If we're up too high, we burn out, we get tired. If we're too low, we're not productive. And that's what we're talking about, is you have to have some of that anxiety to get you in your optimal stress band.
That's it.
And for David and for Friedson, it was running 55-mile ultra marathons. Crazy.
Yeah. It's pretty cool.
Yeah.
All right. So our first episode podcast, MTT podcast this season. I don't know what our frequency is going to be, but we're going to be coming back. So any final words as we shut down the podcast? The 6 reasons you're a slave to your emotions.
The thoughts I would have is pick one. When you saw all 6, you identified, I promise, with one. Go back and listen to, or try to remember some of the components to how to be successful in that. Because again, you're not going to eliminate the tension in any of the 6.
Yeah.
But you've got to figure out how to manage it. And so take one, manage it, and then see what happens.
Yeah.
Could be good.
Yeah.
How about you?
What's that?
Do you have any other final thoughts, Doc? I can't say doctor, is what you said in the beginning, but I can call you Doc.
I'm a
I can call you
doctoral
Doc. You're
candidate.
almost a tour.
What's that?
I could call you Doc because you're almost a tour. You'll be a tour next year, so I can call you Doc.
Man.
Doc Dave. Any final thoughts, buddy?
I think you said it well, man. Honestly, like, you're not going to eliminate, right? You got to work with. And so I think when we're a slave to our emotion, obviously we want to be a master of our emotions. But and like I tell players, man, like the season, the shift, the period in hockey, the quarter in basketball, the halves in football, you're going to have peaks and valleys. Life is not always awesome. There are peaks and valleys in your performance. And so you got to be aware that you're a slave to your emotions. You got to be aware that you're low EI. You got to be aware that your anxiety is too high, and having the right coping strategies to get you out of the valley and up on the peak. But understand that there's a peak, there's a valley coming, right? And so preparing for that, it's peaks and valleys. The ocean goes in and out. Your heartbeat goes boom, boom. And so that's part of the game is, okay, recognizing I'm on a peak. Guess what's going to be happening? I'm going to be going into a valley. All right, awesome. In a valley, how do I manage this? Because the good thing is I'm going up on a peak. So I think the first step is being aware that you're a slave to your emotions. Second step is putting a coping strategy behind it. So
That's good.
All right, I'm Super Dave. This is Dave Bennett. Remember, if you're not planning to win, you're planning to lose. Let's go get it. See you next week, next time.
See ya.